Hi everyone. Today I'm going to say something about why do you sometimes feel suddenly tired. First of all, to speak of this question, the inspiration actually comes from my normal student life. I can still remember that once when I was a junior school student in the third year, which was just the time for entrance examination of senior school. During that period, someone like "I'm tired" appeared in a burst number from time to time. After I entered senior high school, the number declined, but the same situation happened as before sometimes. Maybe some of you think it can be determined as a kind of paraphrase. However, aside from these sentences, large number of my classmates seemed to be tired, with the strain and the nervousness covering all their faces. And I was curious about why the circumstances goes like this. So I checked some information, finally found some amazing data. According to the environment, the above sentences of "I'm tired" is based on the state of environmental performance and is called psychological fatigue in the short term. Before that, just let me explain the classification and definition of fatigue. Fatigue can be roughly divided into two categories. The first is physiological fatigue, that is the state of physical exhaustion after strenuous exercise mentioned above, and the other type of psychological fatigue, which is the main topic of the presentation today, refers to repeated single tasks or engaged intention. Because of accumulated serious work, the nervous system is stressed out, which leads to psychological anxiety and fatigue. In addition, there is a kind of chronic fatigue that is not completely in between. The psychological and physiological effects mainly produce chronic fatigue. The well-known chronic fatigue syndrome is also derived from the accumulation of chronic fatigue. Since the concept of karoshi was presented in 1969, which was just in the second decade after the Second World War and economy reviving, for only a few years, the same cases appeared innumerably. After we entered into the new century, the number kept rising in surge. Repetitive work over a long period of time may cause the accumulation of double psychological and physical fatigue, eventually form chronic fatigue syndrome, and long-term mental fatigue may cause depression. Excluding the potential number, there are nearly 100 million people with depression in China, but the surprisingly high number of patients confirms that the social population should pay more attention to fatigue that may cause complications. Whether it is psychological fatigue or physical fatigue, generally speaking, the diagnostic criteria for chronic fatigue is that there is no other chronic disease, and that the fatigue persists or recurs for 6 months or more. For the diagnosis of fatigue, refer to the fatigue scale developed by Calder. The case of mental fatigue is the boredom of a particular job, based on a single high-intensity work activity, which causes physical fatigue on the human body. The psychological resistance and the stress response in the central nervous system also happens. When the human body encounters the corresponding environment, no matter it is subjected to muscle work or not, the tiredness it brings, which will lead to the mental fatigue. So the question is now converting to what do people need to do to prevent or self-treat mental fatigue or chronic fatigue. First of all, the factors that produce mental fatigue mainly include the following aspects: the intensity and duration of work, psychological load, environmental factors, and nutritional status. Therefore, we can start from these aspects. Work should be arranged reasonably. For the normal rest time of an adult is 6 to 7 hours. We should force ourselves to rest within this limit and release the work during the rest to allow the brain to fully relax. Don't put too much pressure on yourself during work. Just do your best, and have 3 meals a day is important too. These are healthy lifestyles. Maintaining a diet for a long time can make work more efficient and ensure the body is at a healthy level. To speak of the chronic fatigue, most people with chronic fatigue have lower levels of mental health, manifested in lower level of self-affirmation and higher levels of depression and anxiety. Multivariate analysis showed that self-affirmation was the main psychological influencing factor of chronic fatigue. So for this group, the best way is to learn to affirm, not to depreciate yourself, find your advantages, and always remember to encourage yourself. Whatever, if you find any symptoms of psychological or chronic fatigue take place, you must ask for the treatment as soon as possible so that the doctor can give the diagnosis. In the end, I hope you all have a joyful and sunny life.